Hey friends, it's Leah with your Winning Wednesday, WINSDAY, coming to you on a gorgeous Wednesday afternoon. I hope you're having a wonderfully winning day and a fabulously winning week. It's been super busy around here, and I know that everyone I talk to feels the same way. It seems like this has been a wild and crazy summer for a lot of people, and we're just trusting the Lord for what is on the other side of all this craziness, all this busyness, all these good things that are going on too. Um, Today we're going to continue in our study in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. This week we are on 3rd John, and so we're just going to read through it and then we're going to talk about it. So let's get right into the lesson. 3rd John, and it's only 13 verses long, so let's read it together. I'm reading out of the New King James Version. It says, "The elder to the beloved GAIUS," or Gaius, some people pronounce it, "whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. For I rejoiced greatly when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers, who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we may become fellow workers for the truth. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, fretting against us with malicious words, and not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius," this is verse 12, "Demetrius has a good testimony from all, and from the truth itself. And we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. I had I had many things to write, but I do not wish to write to you with pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we shall speak face to face. Peace to you. Our friends greet you. Greet the friends by name." It's such a great letter. It's a short letter, but John has much to say to his friend Gaius and to us today. So let's look at this. When we look at this in 1st John, it's like I said, it's only 13 verses, but it's packed full of information that we can take today and make sense of it in our walk with the Lord right now, and how we work in the church, how we work among people of brothers and sisters in Christ. And so when we first look at this, we want to talk about the recipient of the letter. So this person's name is Gaius, or Gaius, and this, in my thought and opinion, from what I've studied and some of the things that other people have researched about these names of these people, I believe this is the same Gaius that traveled with Paul. So the same one who he was one of Paul's companions. Gaius was from Macedonia, and from Derbe, I believe is the town that he was from, or the area he was from. And he was captured in the riot at Ephesus. And you can read about all of this in Acts 19. But Gaius traveled to Jerusalem with Paul. He awaited Paul at Troas, and that's in Acts 20. He was baptized by Paul, and that's in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 14. And Gaius hosted Paul in his home in Corinth. And you can read about that in Romans 16. And his house was used as a meeting place for the Corinthian congregation. So this Gaius traveled with Paul and heard all of Paul's teaching, and he was a friend of the Apostle John. And so he was a close follower of this truth of the gospel of Christ. And so that's who John is writing to. So John begins by expressing his desire that this Gaius, the recipient of his letter, would be sound and prosperous in his spirit, and subsequently in his health and well-being. So, sometimes people can take that fully out of context and kind of make a whole doctrine out of that. But the truth is, as we think about this, in verse 2, John says, "I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health as it goes well with your soul. So when we think about this, John used this Greek word euchomai, which means to pray. I pray that this is happening for you. So John meant, I trust in good faith in God, that because of God in Jesus Christ, that you prosper in all things, physically, materially, mentally, spiritually, in every way. He said, I hope that you are prospering in every way, in the same way that your soul is prospering. So when John is calling this out to him, when he writes this down, what he's calling upon is that shalom peace that we talked about Sunday morning, that God's full, thriving, flourishing peace, that this well-being, that in every part of your life and body, and that everything goes well with you. That's what shalom peace is about, that there's nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing disturbed in the wrong way in your life. So it's wholeness and completeness in every area of life. That's what John is calling out for his reader. So John offered this personalized greeting to his friend and brother in faith, this Gaius. So if calling out this blessing of salvation, prosperity, and health is calling for God's will to be accomplished for Gaius, wouldn't it be reasonable for us to call for these same blessings upon our brothers and sisters in the Lord, for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters in the Lord? Shouldn't we feel like that is probably worthy to be called upon, to say, God, I want this shalom peace upon my brothers and sisters in Christ, just the way John wanted this for Gaius. Yes, it is reasonable to call upon God for that, to call upon God for his shalom peace, for God to be with our brothers and sisters in Christ. God is no respecter of persons, and we read about that in his word, and that means that he doesn't play favorites. He shows favor on everyone. He shows his favor on everyone. He doesn't play favorites. If you're walking with him, God's favor is going to be with you. And that's what it's okay for us to call upon God's favor to be on his people. So that's what I'm getting at there. So that's just in the first two verses. So let's move on to verses 3 and 4. So John rejoiced that Gaius walked in truth of the gospel of Christ. Gaius was John's spiritual child. And he says, I rejoice when my children are walking in truth. Meaning that Gaius was a convert of John's testimony, of Paul's testimony, and all of these things. So he was a convert. He was a child underneath these apostles who had walked with God, excuse me, who had walked with Christ, or had been called by Christ. Remember, we talked about that word apostle last week, that it means one who is sent out. So John was sent out. Paul was sent out. They were sent out to spread the truth of the gospel. So that's what they were doing. So John rejoiced that Gaius walked in the truth of the gospel of Christ, that he was a spiritual child of his, a convert of the testimony of Christ. And John speaks of Gaius and others as my children. That's how he addresses them. And these included Gaius and others who were under John's leadership and his care in their spiritual journey, and probably in their age as well, because John was an older man at this point. He was at around 90 years old at this time. And so he's writing to these ones who were followers of Christ, who were also learning from his teaching. And so that's why he calls himself the elder. So he's saying, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm walking with the Lord, and I'm teaching you the things that I know. And so he said his joy for his children walking in truth means that it brought joy to John that Gaius and other converts of this congregation of people remained in the truth of Jesus Christ. So they were walking in the truth of the gospel of Christ. And he said, this brings me such great joy to know that you're staying in the truth. And so his personal troubles, I love this about John. John was, he was exiled. John had been boiled in oil. John had had all of these horrible things that happened to him, and here he is still alive. But his personal troubles did not prohibit his joy in the Lord. I apologize for my voice. The wind is blowing today, and it's blowing stuff around in the air, and it's really affecting my voice today. But his personal troubles did not prohibit his joy in the Lord. He was still rejoicing because people were following Jesus. And that's all he wanted. He said, I just want you to follow Jesus. And so that's what they were doing. So as we look on verse 5, we see that John recognized and commended Gaius for his generosity. John said Gaius performed his work faithfully. That's a big thing for us to remember. He performed his work faithfully toward those brothers and sisters he knew, as well as the strangers who would come in their midst and share the truth. So these were people with whom he did not have a personal relationship, but they came in sharing the truth of the gospel of Christ. And so he received them, he hosted them, he entertained them, and supported them in every way. So he treated them with the love of Christ. Gaius hosted, entertained, and cared for these ministers who visited that he knew and those he did not know personally. So he received them. He was like, you're telling the truth of Jesus Christ, and so we're receiving you in our midst, and we're going to take care of you. So then we read on in verses 6 and 7, and this reveals that these ministers who came to this congregation of believers in Christ were those who spoke, who preached, who taught about Christ and for his kingdom, not for their personal advantage. So they were not there to take advantage of people. They were not there to make a name for themselves. They were saying, this is the truth. We know it's the truth. We want to walk in the truth, and we want you to know the truth, and we want you to walk in the truth. That was their whole purpose. That's what they did, and that's why they did it. That was their motivation. We want you to know the truth. And so he received these ministers among them, and they did not set out on a mission for personal gain. And so Gaius recognized this about these people. He said, you're not out here for personal gain. You're out here to spread the truth of the gospel of Christ. And that's what we're here for too. And so he said, you're advancing the gospel, and we're supporting that. So John said, these are good examples to us. So we should receive them and become fellow workers with them, alongside them. Help them in your ministry. So we're going to be fellow workers along with them to advance the truth of Christ, to help others know who Jesus is. So in verse 8, John commends that we support these fellow workers in the kingdom as Gaius did, through hospitality, for caring for their practical needs while they're with us, and to financially support them, these friends of the truth, these ministers of the gospel of Christ. He said we need to financially support them as well, because they don't accept support from those outside the faith, those non-believers. At that time, they were called pagans. We still say that. We still use that word, pagan. So people who do not believe in God, in Jesus Christ. They don't believe this, so they're outside the faith. And they said, we're not going to receive support from those who are outside of the faith. We're only going to receive support from those inside the faith. And we're not coming here for your support. We're coming here to tell you the truth. And so John said we need to support these people as they are following the gospel of Christ and living for him and spreading the truth of his kingdom. So he said we need to support these people and send them out with what they need to further their journey in ministry. So he says, take care of their physical needs. Help, provide food, provide clothing if they need it. Give them shelter while they're with you. And then give them financial support so they can go on and go to the next place that they're called. So then, after he talks about these things, so he's commending Gaius for his work, and he's saying, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much for supporting these people in ministry. Thank you for supporting those who are walking in truth. And then he gives a warning. So in verse 9, John warns. He warns us of a specific rebel named Diotrephes. Diotrephes was in the church, and yet John is warning Gaius about this person. I want us to think about that for just a moment. Let's stop and take a breather here and think about what he just said. You've got a person who is in your church, and they are not doing the right thing. They're not living for the Lord. They're living for themselves. So let's look at this. John warns of a specific rebel named Diotrephes. Diotrephes loved to have preeminence, and that's the word that's used in this New King James Version. He loved to have preeminence and spread falsehood among the true converts. Malicious nonsense is one of the versions calls this. He spoke malicious words against the visiting true ministers of the gospel, and he would not host these true ministers of the gospel. He's like, I don't want to hear what you have to say, and I'm not going to bring you into my home because I'm the important one here, and you need to recognize how important. That's what Diotrephes was. He was all about self-exaltation. And guess what? There was somebody who was cast out of heaven for that very sin, and that would have been Lucifer, who we call Satan, also known as the devil. He was cast out of heaven for self-exaltation. That's exactly what Diotrephes was. He wanted to exalt himself above everyone else. Everybody, look at how important I am, and I'm not gonna take care of all these knaves down here who are below me because I'm important, and you need to know how important I am. And so John is warning us against people who are in our midst, people who are in the church, who are walking among us and have this attitude. He says, don't have anything to do with these people because this is wrong. Let's see what else he says. So he warns against this rebel Diotrephes, and he wanted to be exalted. And he said that if he had the opportunity, John said, if he had the opportunity to be there with him personally, he would address Diotrephes in person, face to face. He said, and I will tell him. He said that if he had the opportunity to be there with them personally, he would speak to Gaius and the people of that congregation about the evil deeds of Diotrephes. He's like, I'm going to tell you about this guy, and I'm calling him out by name because you need to know this is the wrong guy. Do not follow this guy because he's living in the wrong way. He is full of evil deeds. He's not full of good. And he says, I'm going to warn you, and I'm calling him out by name. So he's not being mean and hateful or anything else. He's saying this guy is practicing evil. Don't do what he's doing. So let's go on. He says, John said if he had the opportunity to be there, he would talk to them personally about what Diotrephes was doing, that he was a proud, ambitious, and verbally malicious person who was not content to leave it there just to mouth off and be tacky. But he also was inhospitable to these ministers of truth, and he was rebellious toward the authority in the church, who at that time was John the elder. So he was being rebellious toward all those who were in authority, and Gaius was also in authority at that time. So he was a rebel against such things. Diotrephes would not receive the true ministers. He forbade others to receive the true ministers. And he said, if you receive them, I'm kicking you out. He says, I don't want you to be part of this congregation because you're receiving these people, because you should be paying attention to me. That's what his whole thing was. So he threatened to put them out of fellowship if they received these true ministers of the gospel. Diotrephes, in his arrogance, felt threatened by the truth. And that's what John was warning his people against. He said, Gaius, don't let this happen. And if this keeps happening, be sure to know that if I get to be there face to face with you, I will talk about this. And I'm going to call you. So in verse 11, John warns and admonishes. He wants not to imitate what is evil. He admonishes to imitate what is good. So when we act on what is right and good, the truth of the gospel of Christ, that's what is good, we know that we are of God. This is what John is telling us. But when we act on what is unrighteous, when we act on what is evil, anything that goes against what God has said, anything that goes against what Jesus Christ said, then we know that we are not of God. If you are acting consistently unrighteously and living in evil, then you are not of God. And John tells us that straight up. He makes no bones about it. He does not hold back anything. He just punches. And he says, if you do this, you are not of God. And so you need to understand that. And so this, to me, this is a warning to us to say, you know what, I need to take a personal assessment here and decide, am I living where I need to be? Do I truly belong to God? Am I walking with Him? Am I doing what I need to do? Because John is giving us a straight up warning about how we live. Are we living in righteousness or unrighteousness? So the proof then that we are of God and know Him is that we act on what is righteous in His will. So we're acting in accordance with the gospel of Christ. And so that's how we know that we truly, or that's how others know that we truly belong to Him. So verse 12, then John encourages through the example of Demetrius. Demetrius has a good testimony. Others could testify to the truth of his witness. John testified to the truth of Demetrius' witness. So he said, I know this is true. Others are talking about the truth of this. And John said, and you know that my testimony is true. You know who I am. You know I walked with Jesus. You know who I am. I'm walking in the truth of the gospel of Christ. And I'm testifying to you that Demetrius is a worthy follower of Christ. And so you can follow his example. But Diotrephes, not so much. Don't follow him. So John drew a distinction then between these firsts, these ones who wanted to be first or who acted first. GAIUS went first. He acted in service first. That was his first. He said, the first thing I need to do is serve. I'm going to serve these ones who are coming into our midst and sharing the truth of the gospel of Christ. So he acted in service first by reaching out to minister to the ministers who came to their congregation. So he was ministering to ministers who came to their congregation, even those who did not know personally. He greeted them, he hosted them, and he supported them. So Diotrephes wanted to be first. He wanted preeminence. He wanted to be noticed. So his desire was for prestige and notoriety. He wanted people to know how great he was and to talk about that. And he desired that power of being first. That's what Diotrephes wanted. He wanted to be raised up. He wanted to exalt himself, and he wanted others to exalt him as well. So when you think about this, we see that GAIUS had this idea of serving and being like Christ, where Diotrephes was more like Lucifer and wanted to be served. So John closed his letter then, after he had given this encouragement, this acknowledgement, and this warning. He said, I'm going to close this by saying, tell everyone, greet them personally, tell everyone by name. This is greet them by name. And I love that because it's so important for us to recognize each other by name. It's important for us, in other words, to have that personal relationship in Christ that we have, to love each other, to greet each other in that way. So he says, tell everyone hello from me, basically. And he stated his hope to see the people in person, face to face, and to speak to them rather than to just write. So what a great letter this is for us. And again, it's kind of like the letter that we just talked about last week. He greets and he says, you're doing a great job. Here's the way you need to live, and here's the way you don't need to live. Watch out for people who are teaching false things. Watch out for, watch out for people who are teaching evil things or living in an evil way. Instead, live righteously, walk with Christ, and live for Him. It's a great letter for us, and it's a great admonition to us to pay attention, to make it a personal assessment of ourselves and just say, am I walking the way I need to walk? Am I living for Christ? Am I truly walking in righteousness? So, great lesson for us. From Gaius to today. So, read it for yourselves. We've finished 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. 3rd John as of today. We finished it. It's just 13 verses. So read it for yourself and think about what it's saying to you. What is God saying to you through the words of John in this letter to Gaius? What is He speaking to you today? Let me close today by inviting you to join us on Sunday. We'll meet for Sunday school and worship service. Sunday school starts at 10 o'clock, and we have programs for everyone of every age. So from the nursery to the oldest adult. And I say that every week because it's the truth. And we want to see people from all age groups to join us. And so we meet at 10 o'clock in the morning for Sunday school and discipleship. And then our worship service immediately follows that at 11 o'clock. And we do live stream that service, so you can watch it right here on our Facebook page. We're trying to move things over to our YouTube channel, which currently is under my name. It's Leah Fort 6327. And so we're moving things over there. It's taken me a while to get that done because we have a lot of services that we're trying to move over there. So as we get them uploaded, you can start watching those. That we're trying to archive things there. But you can join us live on Sunday mornings if you are not in the Wellington, Texas area. If you are in Wellington, we would love to see you face to face. Our address is 1000 Emerald Street in Wellington, Texas. And I am continuously losing my voice as I talk. So I'm going to cut it off there. And I thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderfully winning day and a fabulously winning week. Join us Sunday school at 10 o'clock, worship service at 11, 1000 Emerald Street in Wellington, Texas, or join us on the live stream right here on this Facebook page. And I will see you I'll see you on Sunday. Have a great day.